Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ant Pod. The time has now started, and today is episode 11, where we are talking about ants escaping all over your room. That is not too fun, and therefore we have a special guest today to talk a little bit about that. But before that, let's just say hello to all of the hosts. Hello, Sam. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you.
Wonderful. And together with Sam, we of course also have Mr. Dirtnern. How are you, Ryan?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Very nice little chat here. And we of course also have our little American friend, Mr. Casey.
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself? Well, you're doing good. Never mind.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, we are all still getting used to talking on recordings at least. But yeah, today we are talking about ants escaping, and I don't know if you've heard about the species called Solenopsis. They are quite fast growing and they have a tendency to escape. And therefore, I thought a guy with Solenopsis would be ideal for this episode. So we can also say hello to Hood. And Hood, of course.
Hello, guys. Thank you for letting me come on your little podcast, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's very nice for you to joining here. You fit quite well into this topic of today, as you have, if I'm not wrong, you have a little escape with one of your smaller colonies, or what's the story of that?
Well, I've had a couple of escapes, to be fair, recently. It's not been a good time for me, to be honest. My people that watch my channel know, I've obviously had my Solenopsis escape spectacularly, I think would be the good word to use there. I've had just before then, I had my my Camponotus nicobarensis. They decided that they wanted to get out and have a bit of fun. And a little bit before that, which I didn't report on my channel or anything, was that my leaf cutters got out and they were running around everywhere. So recently, I've had a lot of escapees.
Yeah, and the goal with today's podcast is to a little bit find out why the ants are escaping and perhaps what we can do to help future escapes not happen. But Ants Hood, where we of course know you, as we have talked a lot about you. Can you just talk a little bit about you? Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you?
I'm UK based, obviously. You can tell by my beautiful accent. Queen's English, I'd like to point out. Not no treacherous American language. Jokes aside, I'm from the UK. My YouTube channel is about 2 years old now, and I've been keeping ants for about 4 years, believe it or not. And I've got around 30-ish different colonies, most of them different species. I've got quite a fair few. I have definitely got an addiction to ants, would be a very fair, good description. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So how many colonies would you say you have in a large size? Like, you're afraid for them to escape? Do you have multiple colonies?
Yes, obviously you know about my Solenopsis. It's my largest colony by far for individual numbers and for the space that they occupy. My Camponotus are probably sitting around 3,000 strong, give or take. My leaf cutters, which the fungus isn't doing too well at the moment, but I'll talk about that in a bit if you need to. They're probably touching around 1,000 workers. Just having a quick look around. I've obviously got Lagus nigers that are probably touching around 1,000. I've got no idea how my Fidoli noders are doing, but they touched around 3,000 at one point, but they have had a major die-off recently as well. But yeah, so I've got a few very large colonies, and I've got loads of I wouldn't say foundation, established colonies, but in a couple of hundred sizes as well.
Yeah, I must say I always love hearing your numbers, because I feel like you're always very low in the numbers, like 20,000 in your Solenopsis or something. And I'm just thinking, I think it's way more.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. You're always quite low. I'm aiming high, but maybe it's better for videos to aim high. But yeah, but we are of course talking about escaping ants today, and can you just walk a little bit through what have happened with your Solenopsis geminata? And for those who don't know the species, they are the fire ants, the stinging ants, like Ants Canada also have kept and talked a lot about.
Yeah, the tropical fire ants, they're very invasive species, as just about everybody knows. And if you're in a warm climate, then they can become very invasive in the wildlife and do a lot of damage. Obviously, in the UK, that's not so much of an issue because they would never survive our winters because they don't hibernate. So even I had escapees, as it were, I wasn't overly concerned of damaging the local environment because of that. Even if they did get outside, as it were, because the queen, I'm pretty sure, still in the nest because the gaps are so small. But I'll talk through what essentially happened. So, going back quite a few months, I did notice that I had a small number of escapees getting out from the very slight gap. I mean, I'm talking this gap is probably 0.5 millimeter, if that. It is tiny. I could barely fit my nail through it. So I just used some tape just to secure it, and I was talking to Wakushi about how we can best address the issues that we've got. But it wasn't anything overly major, and I wasn't overly concerned. And then day one, I think I referred to it on my video. Then, in fact, no, I lie. I then had quite a few escaping. And the gap that they were getting out of, they'd exploited it and they were pushing through it quite a lot. So I put more tape on it to seal them in for now, and then I did a live stream about addressing the outworld, where to try and prevent them from escaping, I got them all out of the large outworld and I silicon sealed it and hoped that would stop them from getting out. Because what ants tend to do, as I'm sure everyone's aware, is that if they feel an airflow, then they'll generally get attracted to that area and then they'll try and get out through that area. And then that's what they did. I don't think I did a bit thick enough, or I may have left a slight gap in the silicon seal, and they exploited it, then excavated all the silicon seal out of it, and then they had a mass escape. So on day one, I came out and they were everywhere, as you can see from my video. So this was after the live stream, obviously. This was the week after. So then I tried to seal it temporarily with sellotape, but that didn't work. They started coming out of other areas, and I thought at the area where they were originally getting out of, I couldn't see where they were getting out of it from again. And then when I moved the outworld away so I could start policing a lot of them up, because as I was picking them up, the numbers weren't dropping, and it was like, well, I've picked loads up. What, with this, why are they not going down in numbers? And I think I live streamed that the first day as well, when that happened as well. And I noticed that they'd got out of the back end of the outworld where I couldn't see, and there was loads running everywhere. So I taped that up, and then I had the issue again on the third day. The second or third day, I think it was, they were getting out of it again, but this time it was a big mass escape, and there were literally, I lost half my Connolly. You said about my estimates of how many I had, but I guesstimate I had about 20,000, and I went down to at least half. With the mass escapes, and what I was doing is, as I was collecting them up, I was putting them in the spare outworld that I had, which is now attached, to put them in there. So if they keep getting out, I wasn't just putting them back in the outworld for them to get out again.
Can I just interrupt and then ask, for those who don't really know what to do when your ants escape, how did you get them into this spare outworld?
Well, normally, what I would do is use, if it's a large species, I've got a keyboard hoover. And I'd use a keyboard hoover, such as Camponotus. When my Camponotus nicobrensis had a big escape a little while ago, I think we're talking about last year, because they chewed through the stoppers in the Ant Canada setup. Now, these are proper acrylic, a thick plastic, and a clear plastic, and I never thought they would ever be able to chew through it, but they chewed through them and got out. And it's very easy with them with a keyboard hoover. Now, this is the best tool you can get for ant keeping, because you can clean up outworlds with it, and you can also clean up ants if they escape. And it's very easy to deal with that. But unfortunately, with Solenopsis, because they're so small, it's incredibly hard to try and hoover them up and then drop them into the outworld, because they stick. to the filter on it, the air filter, to trap the dirt in the container and stop them going through into the area, the fan that sucks them up. So I did resort to that, but I also tend to, when these escape, is use a cotton bud, because to me it's a lot easier to pick them up on that and flick them in than it is to use the Hoover. But because I had such a massive outbreak, I had no choice but to use the Hoover and then just not clean them off the filter as much, but tap the excess into the outworld, as you can see from my video. And I ended up doing that to try and pick up as many as I can, because there were just so many everywhere. But just like with your outbreak, mine were all over the floor, and I probably lost a couple of hundred trying to clean them up on the table, never mind the ones that were crawling all over my room, which was an absolute nightmare as well, because I was getting covered in ants. They were getting up my trousers and biting my legs. When they initially broke out, I was in barefoot, so they were stinging my feet. But it's just one of them where you have to ignore it, because I had to concentrate on the areas which I could clean up around the outworlds and try and seal where they were getting out from. It was an absolute nightmare, and I strongly recommend you watch my video and everything that I did. So I managed to control that and seal it back up, and then the extra outworld I attached, even though I applied a fresh barrier on a clean outworld when I first started putting them in there from the escapees, because there were so many in there, I obviously just attached it to the setup. But they got past the barrier on the last day, and they were running around everywhere again. So it was the smallest of all the 4 outbreaks that I had over the 4 days. And literally, this was one day after the next. I had no respite at all. I think you can tell by my video that I'm a broken man. I really was. I was literally broken, because when I then cleaned them up and then managed to seal, I decided to disconnect the large outworld and just put brown packing tape is the best way to describe it, all around the base to stop them getting out. Now, what I've noticed since then is that they can chew through that, so I have to make sure I keep applying it and keep an eye on it, because they tend to chew through it and get out through that way. But at the moment, I've very much realised that acrylic setups, no matter how good quality they are, because I think personally, I think Wakushi outworlds are amongst the best on the market, and for value as well. But acrylic just isn't appropriate for Solenopsis, because they will get out eventually. So back on to policing them all up as well. Once I cleaned most of them up, what I then did was I stole this idea off of Ants England, because she did it with her Camponotus when she had an outbreak. I put test tubes all over the room, and so I could collect as many of them up as I could. And it worked, to be fair. I managed to save a couple of hundred just by collecting them up in test tubes around the key areas, because they spent a lot of time. They were interested in my other ant setups. Luckily for me, because they got into the leaf cutters as well. Oh my word, this is just a nightmare. I keep going on. I keep dotting back and forth, but they did get into my leaf cutter setup, as I said in my video, but I put it on a different table, so they didn't get into that again. But they had a lot of interest in my Camponotus paresis, and they were very busy around there as well, so I had to clean them up around that as much as I could, and I put a test tube there to police them up. Unfortunately, like you did, Antsholes, I had no choice on the last day, because they were running around everywhere and all over the floor and everything. And my wife's parents were coming to stop for the weekend, and they were in the bathroom, which is right next to their room, as well as getting down into the kitchen. And I had no choice but to hoover them up, which killed me in the arts that I don't like killing ants unless I absolutely have to. And unfortunately, on that occasion, I really had no choice, because I can't have them stinging my wife's parents, because that would make me very unpopular.
Yeah, that's the hard thing with them, because sometimes they just escape out of hand, and it's sadly something that I think all of us who are here today, we have all experienced, at least the people who are recording, have all this experience mass escapes, or at least some kind of escape. I'm interested in hearing. As I don't know too much about you, Casey, because we haven't talked too much yet. Have you had any escapes, and how did they? Where did they come from?
Oh, my Tetramorium colony escapes, like, once every couple of months. It's always they never really leave the room, thankfully, because pavement ants are everywhere out here. But every time they've gotten out, they just leave little trash piles in corners, like on their little ant trail, whatever excursion they went on for food. Usually when I'm picking them up, yeah, that vacuum cleaner, the keyboard cleaner is a lifesaver. If there's too many to pick up, I usually just, this is awful. Don't tell the people I live with, but I just kind of plug up. Every time mine have gotten out, they've gotten out of like a nest expansion hole that I've plugged with cotton. I don't use cotton anymore because I'm lazy and I won't double check to make sure they're not eating through it. But yeah, I usually end up vacuuming them up, and then I plug the hole that they dug themselves out of, and then I just kind of let whatever I can't pick up, I just let them roam until I don't see them anymore.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think it was Wakushu once told me that I shouldn't be afraid of ants escaping because the ones who escape, as we live, at least here in Europe, we live in a dry environment. My room is hot and dry, so if any ants escape, they will just be dehydrated. And I've had some escapes with my leaf cutters, quite a lot because of used cotton. And I think the lesson for today, for all who are listening here, do not ever use cotton as a stoppage way method, because the ants will get through it. But I also just started seeing a lot of dead ants around, because they do just dehydrate if you are at least inside a room that is heated or something where it isn't too moist. Yeah, what about you, Ryan? Have you had any big escapes? I think you just made a video this last week about one of your ants escaping. Oh, well, no, you were referring to an old video as well. Yeah, tell the story, Ryan.
Yeah, well, I had 2 escapes from the same colony. The first one was when I'd moved them into a wooden nest, and basically chewed through one of the weak points in the nest, and they got out overnight, so they were all over the walls in the kitchen, going in between and behind the backboards. Everything was a nightmare. I didn't know about the Hoover method at the time, so I was there with a cotton bud and just cotton budding them for hours on end back in, and then it got to the point I was finding them weeks after. So I rushed them into like a bigger setup because I knew they needed more space. And then I rushed them into the 50 centimeter cube, like arid style setup I made for them. We were kind of outgrowing that one, and I realized the numbers were getting huge. You're talking like 8 months later though. And yeah, they escaped out of that, but it was at the same time, every single corner got breached. So with natural nests, with silicone, what I have to do is tape them over and seal the tape at the top, which always works generally. Obviously, not always, 95% of the time, all the time. But yeah, it generally works, and it's only them who've ever really breached it. So
how do you keep them in? You put tape above the. How?
I just put silicone on the corners, tape over the silicone on the corners.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And then you just use Fluon and whatever.
Fluon on the sellotape, yeah. And it works. It does work, but it was when we had like a heat wave, and because I only use mineral oil, me and my nerdiness. Yeah, that's how they got out, because it had dried up in the heat, and then they started to pack sand on it bit by bit overnight, and that's it. So every single corner got breached. Once they'd done one corner, I reckon they realised it could be done, and then that's how every single corner got breached at the same time. But they were just everywhere.
So did you know the Hoover method the second time?
Yeah, and that was just a whole world of difference, like so different. But luckily they form like heavy trails. They're never scattered everywhere. It's just trails. So what I'll do is I'll put something at or near the trail, and then they just keep going to it. You can just hoover them up. So they're like coming back, because they're always kind of communicating that way, I think. Possibly, I don't know. But yeah, second time was super easy. Got them all up, and then that's when he added more substrate, like twice a depth and different sticks from the nesting, and they're doing okay now. I mean, I don't know how long for, but I'll probably have to drill a hole in the side and get some acrylic tube and attach another one or something. So I'm not sure. Just thoughts.
Nice. It's just something we all have to deal with here and there. And I must say, the Hoover have really saved me as well. I was tempted not to get a new Hoover after my Hoover broke. I wasn't tempted; I was just lazy. But man, I'm so happy I got a new Hoover because they are world changing if you have them compared to if you don't have them. But finally, we also have Sammy. Sam, have you had any escapes?
So I'm quite lucky. My colony's at home. I haven't had one yet. Obviously, crossing my fingers because it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. Work, however, that's a completely different story. We've had, you can imagine, with the amount of species and colonies we've got, there's always something that's trying to get out or has got out. So I've had a fair few of interactions with picking ants back up and trying to find out where they've come from. I think the worst one for me, we just got a load of Tetraponera for something, I'm not sure. Rufa Negro, that's how you say it. I might have butchered that. But we got them in, and obviously they nest in woods and things like that in the trees. And we put them in the tubes, and they were happy one night, and I went home and was like, okay, I'll deal with them tomorrow. Went in the morning. I looked in the top viv. There were just workers everywhere. So I was like, right, okay. Not a big issue. They've obviously chewed through the cotton. Took me forever to put them back in because apparently they've got a really nasty sting. So I was quite careful with it. So I was watching those for a while. Took me half a day to try and get them all back in. Went to finished up, went back home, came in the next day. I was feeling confident, wanted to crack on with something else. And they basically, the night before, I put like the plastic caps on the test tubes instead. But I'd poked some holes in because obviously just the plain plastic caps don't have any ventilation. And they'd managed to basically chew through the plastic caps, and they made a great big hollow. Every single colony. And there were different workers and colonies everywhere, and it was an absolute nightmare. Because a species that doesn't sting, it's not so bad, I can just pick up straight away. Something that I have to be careful with, like every worker you pick up, it's a right pain. I think that's my worst one.
Yeah, that's especially when they sting. I luckily haven't had anyone who stings yet that I've escaped. I want to put out a question for all of you, but let's start with our beautiful guest, Mr. Hood. What is your preferred method of keeping the ants inside? Is it PTFE or what's your preferred method?
It really depends on what kind of setup I've got. With species like my Solenopsis, because they're in a dry setup, in the outside, I've got no substrate. I don't humidify it at all or anything like that. I generally use PTFE, partly because the species is well known to use debris such as rubbish, the dead, or whatever to get past anything like mineral oil, which kind of stays kind of moist, so things will stick to it. So they'll use that to make a barrier to get past it. So I've really got no choice but to use PTFE on something like that. But if I've got a naturalistic setup where I do humidify it, such as my terrarium with my Polyrhacus in, I will have no choice but to use the mineral oil, because the PTFE, if it's humid, will degrade and be breached very easily, where the mineral oil will stay thick and stay as a decent barrier for a lot longer. So I use both, but it really depends on what the setup of the ant is in and the kind of ant they are, should I say.
Yeah. I'm just gonna drop the ball and see what's your other guys' preferred methods.
I'm the same, to be honest. It's a case of a mix, and it depends on what's set up. If it's high humidity, then I agree with Hood. It's not going to work. Kind of PTFE is just going to run everywhere. And so it really depends on an individual setup. Even if it's got a secure lid, and if it's a small colony, and obviously nothing tiny, which I know is going to get out, I sometimes just wait till they get bigger, and it's not an issue if I don't use a barrier at all, if it's got a secure lid. Obviously, big colonies, you need something straight away. But yeah, it really depends on what setup, what species.
It's very interesting that I've had some quite bad DIY projects with my leaf cutters because they need more space desperately, and they really don't care about plastic containers. Rather, it's oil or PTFE. When it's on plastic, it's like they don't care at all. I don't know if anyone have seen the same thing, but can you feel the difference in materials when you have ants trying to escape?
So I've noticed Pogonorama mechs supposedly aren't supposed to be able to climb smooth surfaces, but I don't necessarily think that's true. Every acrylic outworld or foraging area I've ever used, they can crawl the sides. Given it's very clumsy and they do fall the majority of the time, but even with the PTFE or Fluon, whatever you want to call it, when I put that on there, it helps a little bit. But for the Tetramorium, they don't care. They'll just walk right over it. Not a big deal. I haven't used mineral oil or really anything else. I just kind of rely on hoping my lid's secure the majority of the time.
I must say, I have. Oh, what?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I totally agree. I don't have any setups which don't have a lid because you're not always there to watch your ants 24/7. And eventually, if you don't keep on top of it, every barrier fails eventually because it will get worn down by the ants. So lids are probably the biggest escape preventer you could possibly get, to be honest.
Yeah, I must say, I have a lot of Wakushi outwalls, and they are to the escape. I mean, for the small ones, not the massive ones that you've used to. But I don't have a barrier on half of my setups because my ants are just not eager to escape. And I think it's important for those listening being afraid that their ants escape when they come home. It is mostly the larger colonies that will escape. It is not really your small five worker flowers colony. It is in the big sizes. And since you've been a little bit quiet, Mr. Ryan, I would like to say, what would you say to the people would be the best way of keeping your ants inside? Do you have a method like don't use cotton or anything you want to say?
To be honest, all I was going to say was I just use mineral oil. If I don't have a lid, which is very rare, I mean, the colonies I've done is my trap jaws where they're surrounded by water, and then my Scutellaris, which have escaped. So definitely have a lid if you can. My Rugonodes have a lid, never escaped. But yeah, just like what Hood said, really, just make sure you've got a lid because you know your barrier's not always going to be on your side, unfortunately. And when they're in mass numbers, they just have the energy and power to actually breach it. You know, and if they set their mind on escaping, they'll do it. You know, it's one of them things if they really want to.
Sorry, mate. I think
no, it's okay.
I think Hans Holifer jumped on the key point there. Is that I very much noticed with my Solenopsis particularly because they are my larger species and I've got people that know my setup. It is a very big setup compared to most ant colonies would have. And I think the key point there is space. Where if you've got a small colony, they don't need the space because they've got everything they need in the outworld that you've got, so that they won't try and exploit any gaps or anything like that. And if you keep a big enough setup as in the arts of outworlds and areas for them to travel to, then you're going to alleviate that need or that drive to get out and look for more food.
No, definitely.
Yeah, people say you feed them more and they won't escape as much, but I can definitely tell you, I feed my Solenopsis a ton of food. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
food, but yet they're still trying to get out because I don't think the setup is just large enough for what they need. So it is something I'm working on, but unfortunately,
that's why mine escapes as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it comes down to cost at the end of the day because even acrylic outworlds aren't cheap. A decent quality ones at decent sizes for what I need for my Solenopsis, even if they couldn't get out of the acrylic, the cost you're looking at for a large colony like them is ridiculous. And I am looking at moving to glass to try and prevent them getting out of the gaps in it to see if that will alleviate some of the escaping issues. But ultimately, it's the space that I need for them. And I need to have outworlds, tubing and outworlds all over the room just to alleviate that need, that drive to escape. So I think that Hans Holifer's bang on, where if it's a small colony, it doesn't need to expand in roaming areas. The nest might be fine, but if they haven't got that space to roam, then they will have this need to try and escape and get out constantly.
Oh, definitely. But it is, mainly large colonies.
because I noticed something interesting today with the Diversa colony at work. It was a case of they normally get about 4 large crickets a day, just because they're absolute units. And I'd completely forgotten to give them by the evening. I went in the lights off as I do, double check everything because I can't help it. And I saw a trail that's normally off their normal pattern, because it might sound strange, but you're used to seeing the Diversa trail kind of every day. They go in a set way. They kind of know their routes, and they've got obviously the pheromones all laid out. I saw one go in a completely different direction. I was like, hang on, what's going on here? Followed the trail around, all the way up the side of the glass tank. They're trying to squeeze out of a tiny little gap in one of the corners where the glass lid, there's a little lip, or it's raised because of the edge of the silicone. And it just occurred to me in my head, it's quite funny. It was almost like they know I've forgotten to feed them. And they were like, right, stuff this. If you're not feeding us, we're finding some food kind of elsewhere. So it was an interesting one today because they really were going for it. And then I put the crickets in there, and then they focused their attention on something completely different then because they were being fed.
I think when it comes down to all, ants are most of the time, they are quite easy to read. I mean, definitely. I feel it's quite easy sometimes that you just can read that, okay, you're very hungry since you're all, especially with my leaf cutters. If I don't feed them leaves, especially my adder, they just sit all the way around the outworld trying to break the barrier, and the outworld just get filled with workers. When I then feed them the leaves, they then focus on actually feeding. So
they almost tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you just don't really see it with smaller colonies because it's a lot easier to give them half a roach and then they are overfed. Where a large colony may say, "Oh, we would like twice or a lot more than what you're actually feeding us," and then they may want more. But I think we should go into a little bit of the next part of the podcast, because we have also from the Antpod Instagram asked you guys, you the listeners, if you have had any escapes and what stories you've had, and if you want to get your story in next time, well, head over to the Antpod Instagram and follow the stories, because that is where we ask for stories. And I think it's a lot of them are quite interesting and in a dumb funny way. Gecko Ants, he forgot to put his cotton back in his Ladius niger colony, and the queen walked out. So I think that's pretty much something you never want to see, just the queen casually walking around on your floor.
No. I've done something similar with my millipedes.
Oh.
I took the lid off one of my tubs, which is the fire reds, about 15 centimeters long. I took the tub off and I went in the kitchen. I started chopping food up for them. I thought I'll just chop it up. I got distracted and started doing something else briefly for 5-10 minutes. Then got the food and went back in, and there was just 5 millipedes just walking around. Okay, guys, oops. So put them all back in. But,
I think another tip or thing to note, it's led me onto that point, is that don't try and move nests or expand and all the rest of it when you've either got something else to do or you're tired, because it's just a recipe and it's not going to end well.
Oh, definitely not.
Speaking from experience, just don't try to do anything when you're tired, let alone thousands of ants moving nests and all sorts.
And I think it's also, I think it's very important to keep calm when you do have an escape. I were connecting a new outworld for my leaf cutters, and they were escaping all over the place as I had disconnected everything, and it stressed me a little bit that I had to get all of these ants up. And then I tried to connect one tube to the outworld, and then I broke the outworld, and everything just got way worse. And then I got a whole other stress level until I just took a big breather and saying, let's stop the escape and just pick the ants up. Because I feel like a lot of, at least when you have your first big escape, you stress a lot. And I don't know. I feel like you should more just focus on where are the ants coming out from, stop it, and then kind of, look at the damage.
Yeah.
Another story we have got is from Tom Ant, who had a Solenopsis sevisma colony. I don't know if I'm I know I'm not pronouncing that correct because I'm bad at pronunciation. And he had the same. He had plucked it up with cotton, and he had printed a 3D plug to fit in the hole. but the day before he planned to print it, they escaped from the cotton. So yeah, that must be lovely to rethink about.
So how many actually escaped? Sorry.
Well, he doesn't say. He just said around 400 workers probably escaped as they got through the cotton.
Yeah, that would have been bad. Do you reckon there was more in yours, Hood?
Say again, sorry.
400.
I think Hood has many thousands plus.
No, I mean like that's actually escaped. Yeah, definitely. God. Yeah, that'd be horrendous.
Yeah, it was.
That's Solenopsis as well, isn't it? So.
Yeah, the Solenopsis was by far my worst escape that I've ever had in the history of my life. And if I never have to repeat those 4 days again, I'll die a happy man. It was horrendous. It generally was horrendous. I mean, when you're trying to juggle work as well, because obviously I'm in a full-time employment, as you all know, and then you come home, and I even at one point I came home early because I was so exhausted from cleaning them up the night before. And I managed to cut away from work a bit earlier than normal, and I came home, and that was the worst breakout I had in it, actually. I was still in my work clothes trying to clean it all up, and it was nasty. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
It must be terrible. I remember my mess escape very clearly. I don't know what I was doing, but I came in and I was just supposed to. I think I was supposed to go in and edit, and I just went from having to edit for 1 hour to dealing with escapees for 5 hours or something. And yeah, I think something that personally scares me a lot is from, let me just find the message again, from Ants Inside, who had a 2,000 worker flowers colony chew through the tubing. And there were so many ants that escaped that he ended up just not having to, he couldn't get them back again because they had just escaped outside. And the thing that he says about them chewing through the tube, that is something I'm personally really scared of. I don't know if it's a concern I share with you guys.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm not. I mean, out of all my colonies that I've ever kept, I've only known one ant to actually attack the tubing itself, and that was my noders. But it was such a slow rate. I knew it was happening, so I kept an eye on it. But I've never known them to actually chew through the tubing itself, to be honest. And to tell you the truth, I'm very surprised about Ants Insight, because Flavia's to do that. I mean, very surprised that they would actually be able to do it. Never mind attempt
it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
But I'm not overly concerned about the tubing itself. I've never, in all my years and all my colonies, have I known them to chew actually successfully, without me realising it, chew through the tubing at all. And generally speaking, it's at the end where it's connected into a junction.
Yeah.
In some shape or form. Yeah. Never.
I must say it's not so. I mean, I'm just scared of the thought, because if they chew in like a junction and suddenly just be able to pop their head out, that way you can't really monitor it too good. If they should suddenly just come out of a three-way connector or something.
No, the worst thing about, which I've noticed about my Nicobrensis recently as well, including my Solenopsis with the recent escape, and my leaf cutters with their recent escape, is that once they realise they can get out, they're constantly trying to exploit that same area, trying to chew through whatever's there to get out or anything. They never relent. Once they know that there used to be an avenue out of there, they seem to target that area because they know it's a weak point and persist in trying to get out of it as well. The ants are so smart. They're just so smart.
Yeah, that's the thing. They are just smarter than you think. A big story also came in from Buckman Bob, who had a massive colony that also escaped. But that was due to the PTFE, the barrier failing. And I feel like that is the most common escape, that you just relax a little bit with monitoring your barriers. Or you have a very dumb situation. Like we also have Lynn Ninoturo, who had a massive Latius Niger escape because her boyfriend, by mistake, disconnected a tube, and that then led to a mass escape. So I feel like a lot of the stories are like, half of them are just these dumb small things like, I forgot to put the cotton in, and like I stressed with my tube change, and I destroyed the outworld, and that just became a whole other level. I feel like it's the small things that may go wrong.
Yeah,
It's kind of a dumb saying, but it relates to how you kind of got stressed out and you broke your outworld. The motto I live by and work by is slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
That is actually very true.
Unless you've got Solenopsis. Sorry, I had to put that in. I couldn't avoid it. Sorry.
No.
In that case, just rush and get it done as quickly as possible.
It must be terrible.
Yeah.
It must be terrible doing tube changes and just seeing these stinging ants running out.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we will head over to this week's ant news, because we are already 40 minutes has passed already. We are nearing the end. To be honest, these podcasts run so fast that we may have to up the time a little bit, because I feel like they may be end too fast. But yeah, guys, do you have any ant news? And while you think of it, I'll just start with mine. Because why not? I just saw last week we discussed a little bit about the Manica Rubida experiment that was started last week. I think who was the man? I can't remember his Ant Ramblings.
and Ramblings and Antimatter.
Yeah, they started this experiment with Manica Rubida queens and how to found them successfully. And the ant lady, she popped in and came with a special offer. So I think it was like £10 discount. So they went from like 15 to £4 or something. And then she just said, "Let the experiment begin" or something. I can't remember the exact quote, but it just felt like that was something I loved seeing. I think the offer have ended now, but a big shout out to the ant lady for doing that, because I think that was a cool way of helping the community at least.
Oh no, definitely, mate. Yeah.
Have you experienced anything, Ryan? Seen anything special?
No. I like watching that D Colony. He made some nice DIY, slushy cups nests. DIY,
that's right.
Grout nests.
I like
that was cool. That was
videos.
good to
They're
see,
nice.
yeah. But that was about it really. I saw his thing and I enjoyed it. But to be honest, I haven't had much time to catch up on things, and I'm part of the Manica Rubida experiment thing. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh. What about you, Hood? Do you have any ant news this week, or are you also on the busy team?
Unfortunately, I'm on the busy side of life, and I've not really caught up on my normal viewers of ant videos at all, which is unfortunate. But I am aware of the Memica competition. Is it? Would you call it that? I am aware of it, but realistically speaking, I cannot get another Ant Connolly at the moment. I don't think I'm going to have to hold out, because I just don't have the physical space to put them anywhere. But if I was going to do that experiment, I would go for a full naturalistic setup with them, and not an artificial one.
That is an interesting call. You're joining Team Dirt Nerd.
Let's go.
Yes,
I got excited.
Yeah, I don't do naturalistic setups very much, because they're not constructive for a decent viewing for videos for my YouTube channel. So I generally don't. But I feel that for them, the best option would be a naturalistic. Hashtag just saying.
What colony is that? Sorry.
The Rubra. It's not. Is it Rubra?
Yeah.
Manica Rubida. Yeah.
Oh, Rubida.
Yeah. There's
definitely.
my 2p.
No,
then
definitely.
To round it up, Mr. Casey, do you have any ant news for this week?
I don't know if it's news, but I found a pretty good write-up on how Pogonomormex are environmental engineers. It's just pretty good write-up about how they choose what pebbles to make their mounds out of, because they like certain rocks and minerals absorb heat better. And like in Pogonomormex occidentalis mounds, they actually store their brood in there in the summer, so they develop quicker. But it's a nice little write-up on the American Museum of Natural History.org's website. I'll post a link to it on my Instagram if anybody's interested.
And what is your Instagram?
CT_ants.
Wonderful. And I can just look at the timer, and it has officially hit 45 minutes, guys, which was very fast, 45 minutes. So it is time to enter the outro part of this podcast. And if we just go over one round, if you had one thing you would say to a beginner regarding escapees, what would it be? How to stop it, how to prevent it? What would your one choice be? Let's start with Sam.
So I've got two main things. One of them would be just, I've already said it, so don't try to do things when you're tired. I add new tubes, connectors. Don't do it before you go to bed and then wake up in the morning and hope it's okay. And that never works out normally. And the second thing is that lidless setups look really cool, but just don't do it yourself and get a lid. And that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm too scared to not have lids on my setups. It's haunting me. I was so scared with the. I really didn't like the naturalistic setup because it didn't have like a proper lid. It just had the fish tank lid, and I did 3 times see a Singularity worker just casually walking around, and I'm thinking, no, I thought I updated the barrier, but that was of course before I used tape, because Ryan just said use tape earlier. Yeah. What about you, Hood? Your one thing you would recommend a beginner, what would that be?
What one thing would I recommend to a beginner? No matter how desperate you are for a fast-growing species, but make it look really cool on Ants Canada, who's a really popular channel, do not, even for experienced keepers, do not get Solenopsis geminata. Do not get them.
I'm so glad you got them, Hood, because I was about to get them, and I thought that I would follow your progress first. Yeah. Very glad.
Cool, though. You can't deny they're cool.
Very.
I was just saying that you say don't get them, but there's always that thing of in my mind of like, no, I shouldn't, and then I see them and I'm like, cool though.
I nearly got a heart attack the other day. I got a big order from Ant Antics with a few queens inside, and Rich, he said he was packing the package, or I don't know if I talked to you, Sam, because I talked with the official Instagram.
Yeah.
And I saw like, shall I also drop in like a fire ant queen?
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, and then I just got a mail that your package have been ordered or something, and I thought, oh no, what decision did he make? And I was like, I'm scared it's too late, but I would rather not have a Solenopsis in there. But turns out it was just being booked, so the package hasn't been packaged or anything.
Yeah, we felt we'd be nice to you for now.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. CT, Mr. Casey, I should say. I look at your name, CT. Casey, your tip for experienced or newbie ant keeper regarding escape prevention or escaping ants?
Don't use cotton as a stopper. If you do use cotton, check on it regularly, because the time will escape you and they will chew through that cotton eventually.
Very true words. What about you, Ryan?
Everyone's already pretty much said everything now. So that I could think of, if I'm honest. But yeah, don't panic. Don't run upstairs, scream into a pillow, or stop, drop, and roll. But yeah, just stay calm, really. Grab that moment and seize it and smash it.
Yeah, and adding on that, adding on staying relaxed. I think it's just about finding the escape and then dealing with the ants. You can look at the ants all over the place, but it's not important that you look at all the ants as long as they escape. So I feel like it's just, find out where they escape from. And I would have said don't use cotton, but that was taken. So I will say invest in a keyboard hoover. That is the best thing you can do.
Absolutely, that is the game changer.
Saved me.
Yes.
I got one.
With that assessment.
Huh?
I said I concur with that assessment.
Yeah. I mean, of course, if you have bigger ants, if you have smaller ants, it's a little bit of a different deal. Yeah. But with that being said, I think we have hit the end of this podcast. I must say, yeah, maybe we should make these podcasts longer because I feel like the time was flying with Mr. Hood. So yeah, I would just like to say thank you all for listening. Hood, do you have any final words you would like to share with the whole world, or at least the ones who are listening to this podcast?
No, I've really enjoyed it, and thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'll keep you in mind to invite you next time. We'll have to talk about Solenopsis or whatever.
I've got a wide variety of ants.
He's got some Sansabinus that I'm super interested in because I got some around the same time. So I'll be bugging you about those more often.
She's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, stunning.
Oh, you have also had them, Sam?
We had them in the past, so we haven't got any in stock at the minute. But when I first started working there, we had a few.
Yeah, I must say it's the same with both with you and also Aesthetic. You see so many different ants because you get them in, and you of course sell them out again. But that's something very unique that not many ant keepers get to see.
It's great from my point of view. It's also hard not to bring everyone home though. That's the other problem.
But yeah, guys, I must disappoint you all. Last time I promised that we would have figured out how to end these podcasts. Spoiler alert, we have not found a way to end these podcasts. So yeah, Hood, you of course have a regular goodbye saying. Can we just get your Hood goodbye?
Goodbye.
I can't remember it. What do I say?
Succotash.
Yeah, I think
what it was.
No, I can't remember it. I'm not doing my video and I can't remember it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I've let you down.
Mr. Hood, don't you just say goodbye for now? Is that is that an old one, or I don't know?
No, I can't remember. It's something about seeing you in my next video. But bye for now. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing my next one. But bye for now.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And
I couldn't remember it.
No, I put you on the spot. It's okay. It's okay. We of course also have Ryan. You also have a goodbye. Let's just hear Ryan.
Yeah. As always from me, peace and love. I'm out.
Oh, and this time he didn't leave the chat. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's just Sam and Casey. We of course we haven't talked much about how we should end it, but Sam, your goodbye.
Yeah, I'm going to be incredibly boring and just stick to I've thoroughly enjoyed myself and goodbye.
Wonderful. And Casey?
Yeah, boring here too. I had a good time. Love talking with you guys. It's awesome. Goodbye.
Wonderful. And I'll end in Antholf style and saying, yeah, thank you for listening. Be sure to share this podcast with all of your ant friends who may find it useful. And maybe if you did find it useful yourself, leave a like and just share it anyway, because why not? And with that being said, don't forget to share this podcast. And hopefully, I almost forgot. Next week, we won't have a podcast next week because I will be in Italy. So we will have 1 week break. And yeah, then we should return again in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, with that being said, bye!